I'm not here for any pity points. I'm not here to be viewed as a product of victimization. I'm not here to be a token, nor a poster child of this college. Furthermore, I'm not the sole voice of William and Mary's Black community. I happen to be a voice within that community, but by no means could represent the entirety of values and beliefs among us, as there is no specific criteria for what constitutes blackness. I'm here to spread my truth and unapologetically tell my story, which I believe offers tangible solutions to the most pressing issues facing society today. You may get uncomfortable during this conversation. However, my presence and when I'm talking using my vernacular instead of talking and using American Standard English isn't meant to assure your comfortability. All my life, I've heard of this ambiguous term of the game. Whether it be from my dad, some OGs from the barbershop, or my granddad reminiscing over his heyday, I've always heard these distinct words. Learn to navigate the game, son. As a kid, I never truly knew what it meant. I mean, what game were they referring to? Was there even a game to begin with? Well, despite any previous ignorance I may have once held, I began to understand that this game that I felt estranged towards, we actually ended up having a closer relationship than I anticipated. I had been in it since birth. I wasn't merely an outsider looking in. I felt more like a pawn in a game of chess. And one of the earliest memories I had in this game came from Virginia's good old public education system. It was here where the game attempted to swallow me whole. It was here where the concept of my hair as nappy or kinky came as unprofessional. It was here where the concept of code switching was forcefully implemented in my head as essential for me to make it in a professional setting. It was crippling. Having to put exhaustive effort into how what you say or do will be perceived by others, assuring others' comfortability at the expense of your own. Despite all those obstacles bringing to focus who I am and what I look like rather than what I was learning, I was a great student. In fact, I loved school, despite the fact they miseducated me. Virginia's public education system loved the founding fathers, man. You would have thought it was the second coming of Jesus, the way they celebrated it. I mean, even took us on a field trip on down to Jamestown so we could see everything ourselves. But the only time that my people were remotely close to being mentioned was during Black History Month in February. The 1 month of the year and the shortest one at that. And quite honestly, the only person I remember learning about was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, what was it about Dr. King? Was it his marketability? Was it his role as a peace fighter that refused to condone violence? Did his timeless preaching voice and rhetoric found in the pulpits of Black churches across the country make those who ran the game comfortable? Were these teachers even explaining Dr. King's socio-political beliefs in the correct manner, or just giving me the bits and pieces that they wanted me to hear? Never mentioned that he was crossed by friends, dismissed by the media that championed his cause, and abandoned by supporters who questioned the efficiency of his strategy. As a middle and high schooler, I was naive, but as a 20-year-old Black college sophomore studying public policy, I'm often in a state of ambivalence because it's conflicted to essentially be told by state curriculum that in order to make it in this field of work, you must conform and mimic Dr. King's socio-political demeanor because that's what the game views as comfortable. As I grew older and became politically and intellectually mature, I began to read about the Black legends that public school neglected to teach me about. So Marcus Garvey's influence, Malcolm X, of philosophical deliberation between Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. The historic feats in Congress from Shirley Chisholm and the leadership of Ella Baker, amongst others. As I continue to do more research, I begin to understand that high schools were doing an abysmal job of teaching the history of slavery. And in fact, according to a survey conducted by Southern Poverty Law Center of 1,000 American high school students, only 46% knew what the Middle Passage was. Only 18% understood the significance of Nat Turner's rebellion. And only 8% knew the true reason why the South seceded from the Union. This is where I begin to understand the myth of black inferiority and how essential it is to the game's operations. Marketing communications pioneer Tom Burrell explains that this myth is based on the premise of erasing black people's history and using media distortion as a way to promote the contempt of the American experience, specifically the black American experience. It uses media distortion, and not only does it do that, but it feeds off the complex conditioning of black people's minds. Instead of showing the greatness of our history, they show the plight thereof. Carefully, handpicking realizations of our experience for their profit. The myth attempts to make blackness synonymous with trauma instead of triumph, with fear instead of strength, with the status quo instead of the revolutionary. The myth uses the media to spread its tactical messaging like deeming lighter skin more beautiful than darker skin, or siloing athletic careers to black children as if we don't have some intellects, or showcasing black broken communities without showing the policies of why they look this way, or misstating our history to fit their narrative, like saying that Rosa Parks sat down because her feet was tired, as opposed to saying Rosa Parks sat down because she took a stand. The funny thing about this myth is that it has calculated forgetting. It wants you to believe that you come from nothing so that you ultimately resort to nothingism. Because as Carter G. Woodson once stated, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here, go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. This is the game. And these black legends inspired me because they understood the psychological warfare that this myth and the game brought. But even more so, they inspired me because these people were like me. I mean, they were human. They bleed like I bleed, feel emotion like I feel emotion, may have gone through bouts of depression like I've gone through bouts of depression, but was separated from being just a bunch of skin, blood, and bones was their innate ability to be comfortable in a constant state of discomfort, understanding that change not only happens in the presence of tension, but because of it. And that same tension that those legends embrace, I somewhat feel on this campus every single day. It's like an ominous shadow, always behind you, but you can never see it. I mean, this school, it's old, man. It was here chartered in 1693 before the inception of America in 1776, which essentially means that this myth of black inferiority is embedded into the very fabric of William and Mary. I mean, let's talk about it. The oldest academic building in the country, the Wren Building, was built off the backs of enslaved black people. The college itself enslaved black people well into the 19th century. The college received a flagpole from the Ku Klux Klan. And in 1975, the Board of Visitors refused to hire Gerard X. Green, a black attorney at the law school, and only as of 2009 did the Board of Visitors formally acknowledge that they owned and exploited slave labor from its founding up until the Civil War. I mean, even my presence on this stage will make old Thomas Jefferson and James Monroe turn over in their graves. Never mention the fact that I proudly walk on this campus in all black, rocking my headphones, blasting Stevie Wonder or N.D.R.E. During the political and civil unrest that occurred this past summer, students across the country were highly critical of their respective universities of previously or are actively contributing to the harm of black and brown communities. And that was the case here at William & Mary. My friends John Ezzard, Helena Boyd, Olivia Gernblum and I received information about this place called Highland, which is the former estate and plantation of James Monroe located in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, we heard through word of mouth that Highland was a place that was glamorizing Monroe as a founding father without reckoning with his role as someone who enslaved up to 250 black people in his lifetime. Understanding this, we wanted to receive more information. So we decided to set up a meeting with the director of Highland herself, Director Sarah Bond Harper. Now, our intention during this meeting was to see whether Highland was explaining history as it is or as shown which it was. And as we communicated with Director Bond Harper and she began to explain Highland's initiatives, we began to understand and realize that Highland wasn't merely watering down history. They were reckoning with Monroe's egregious history of slavery through an authentic lens. And to achieve this, they erected a Descendant Advisory Council, which consists of individuals who are direct descendants of those who were enslaved by Monroe and Highland. Now, Director Bond Harper explained that this Descendant Advisory Council had shared authority over the premises, meaning that they have a say in whatever happens there, from exhibit information to financing events like weddings to the daily operations occur. Quite frankly, they were there to ensure that their family's history was told in full authenticity and accuracy. Now, to make sure this wasn't just some lip service, I wanted to set up a meeting with the descendants themselves, and luckily, our student group was able to do so. We met two descendants, Jennifer, Stacy, and George Monroe. And in this meeting, the first question that my friend Olivia asked to the descendants were, one, if they felt in any way disrespected. They collectively and resoundingly said, one, they weren't finna take disrespect from anyone, and two, that they felt that Highland was giving a voice to the voiceless, as they had authority over the very grounds that their ancestors once plowed. Among other racial reconciliation initiatives, Highland had also been highlighting the biographies of those who were enslaved at Highland, showcasing that these weren't just people that were enslaved without talents. These were enslaved people whose talents were exploited. Furthermore, the Descendant Advisory Council also helped confirm some of the research by the researchers at Highland, Miranda Burnett and Martin Violet, who found direct links between descendants located in Florida and still in here in Virginia. Now, our student group understood the significance of the research and Highland's initiatives. It spoke for himself. But we also recognized that there was an estrangement towards the student body. In fact, some could even argue it looked as though William & Mary was hiding the fact that Highland even existed. Understanding this, our student group came together and we formally erected a student advisory committee, which is tasked with completing and promoting transparency amongst the student body, as well as advocating and promoting research opportunities and scholarships. Yeah, the onus shouldn't be on me nor any other college students that want to inspire their college to get this thing right, but I refuse to leave the history of my people in someone else's hands. This ain't the same kid who's just taking that information that y'all spoon-fed him in the 3rd or 4th grade. We're challenging everything. And in this new era, students ain't trying to play a little game no more. We don't want another working group or task force that will merely prolong deliberate change. Students want change now. We can debate, legislate, integrate, assimilate, any other 8, but until we attack this myth of black and 40 at the root, nothing will ever change. It takes more than clinch fish hashtags and performative activism to bring about some systemic change, and the work at Highland is systemic change, rectifying their wrongdoings while simultaneously debunking those myths of those old siloed stories of old betrayed promises. Telling history as an ecosystem of people instead of just conforming to historical silencing. William & Mary often prides itself on being the alma mater of the nation, a place where the concept of a more perfect union may have originated. This is how you create a more perfect union. By granting students opportunities for research opportunities, scholarship opportunities, opportunities to learn their own history through genealogy, Simply put, Highland is doing something every university needs to do to reckon with their egregious past. They need to have people at the table who are being discussed to ensure full authenticity and accuracy. We must continue to advocate and learn our history and never forget it. Because we understand that you come from kings and queens, you conduct yourself like such. Because as Carter G. Woodson once stated, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him to stand here, go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. Well, at Highland, the descendants have found their proper place. At the table where decisions are being made. Sooner or later, the game has been flipped on its head, and we're ready to start on. Thank you.